Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by A.G. Hines Company. If you have a do-it-yourself project that you're planning, start it at A.G. Hines Company. That means the right tools, the right building materials for your project, and with more than 100 years of experience and expertise, they can help you if you have questions. It's so much better than going one of these big national chains. You're going to get better prices, and you're keeping the money right here in town locally, just as you have with Gordon Hines' daddy, granddaddy, and great-granddaddy. That's a four-generation company. They've been going on at A.G. Hines Company for more than 100 years. aghines.com for you to learn more. They're located right downtown. Start your own do-it-yourself project locally. A.G. Hines Company. All right. Let me welcome in the next two members of our panel right down here. We have Bob Hodge, a longtime sports writer and a longtime member of this panel. Bob, thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Right over here, former D1 football player at Virginia Tech, former assistant coach at Virginia Tech, former defensive coordinator at Virginia Tech, Justin Hamilton. Justin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, John.
All right. Before we get back to basketball, I want to talk about some of the Orange Bowl news. We can go ahead and put the graphic up right now. Now, look, Clemson, when I went to look at the guys that they have who are transferring, it doesn't tell you when they transferred. So I had to put all their guys up there. Some of these may have transferred before the season, but they're in the portal now. Because of that, I had to put some guys from Tennessee. I just wanted to have the full list. So, like Laneith Whitehead for Tennessee. You know he didn't take part this year, but still he's in the portal over there. So, but you see the main gist here, all right? Jalen Hyatt has opted out. He's going to the NFL. He's not going to play in the bowl game. Cedric Tillman going to the NFL, not going to play in the bowl game. Hendon Hooker, as you already know, injured, not going to play. Then you see the transfer, some new, some old, but that's not really the big concern. Darnell Wright announced that he will play in the game, even though he is heading to the NFL. Clemson, Miles Murphy, out. That's their star defensive end. Mel Kiper has him in the top 10 of the NFL draft. Linebacker Trenton Simpson, I've seen him listed. He's opting out, but it's injury related. Regardless, first round expected to be a first round pick for Clemson and their linebacker. So they've got two of their front seven that are out. And of course, their starting quarterback for the year has transferred out as well. All right, so I'm going to ask you guys, you throw all this together. You also put in the fact that Tennessee's without offensive coordinator Alex Golesh. They've had to rearrange how they're doing that. What's the advantage here? Who's got the advantage? Who's got the disadvantage going into this bowl game with the number of people out? You basically got Tillman didn't play much this year, so even though he's good, I'm not going to count him. It's basically Hyatt, Hooker, and Golesh. And over here you got two really good defensive players and their quarterback who was So, who's the advantage going into this game? Justin.
I would say the advantage is Clemson because when you look at Hendon Hooker and Jalen Hyatt, the production that they had this year, that's a lot of Tennessee's production. Clemson, their backup quarterback, they feel good about, and they've done a good job in recruiting. They have a lot of guys. They have a deep roster. It's hard to say, but if it were me, I would feel Clemson has the advantage because, like I said, Hendon Hooker and Jalen Hyatt are critical in Tennessee's team and the way that they play.
I was just going to say, if you had Hendon Hooker, I wouldn't care so much about Hyatt and Tillman, simply because I think Tennessee's got some depth at wide receiver, some young guys that are going to be able to play. They're going to be playing maybe a game earlier than they don't like to have seen them play. But I think losing Hooker is the big thing. The two defensive players, that almost swings it back, especially with Wright coming back. Because now you've got a top-flight offensive lineman who's going to be going against a lesser defensive lineman. But I just think Hooker, who's not an opt-out, not a transfer, unfortunately it's an injury, I just think that overrides everything else since he made Tennessee's offense so good.
I'm on the same page with them. I think that Clemson has the advantage, and primarily the quarterback situation. And as you pointed out, Clemson feels good about Klubnik at quarterback. And now you're putting Joe Milton in a situation without Hyatt. And I know Tillman missed a lot of the season, but without Tillman. And now he's throwing to three guys. McCoy's good. Mm-hmm. Keaton has some nice plays. Squirrel's going to probably get open somewhere, right?
Yeah.
But I still question a little bit Milton being able to be as accurate in that situation. Mm-hmm. So I think the quarterback situation is huge, and I think the advantage goes to Clemson in that.
There's another big question mark out there. People are concerned about Jeremy Banks, whether or not he's going to be available. Apparently it's a question with academics. There's no word yet. Does anybody want to go anywhere with anything?
I've heard what you've heard about academics. There's nothing confirmed to me.
Yeah, so we'll see if Jeremy Banks is available. We saw what happened to the Tennessee defense.
I
don't think it was 100%. It all didn't go wrong because he wasn't out there, but it clearly played a role. in the South Carolina.
You don't want to
debacle.
play teams from South Carolina without Jeremy Bates. That's the rule.
Well, let me end this really quickly. The one thing we're not mentioning is Alex Golesh, your offensive coordinator, being out, and that's everyone here thinks that Josh Heupel can handle the play calling, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of prep, running practice, doing everything else, as a former coach, how big of an issue is it to be without a coordinator going into a bowl game like that?
I don't know that it's a huge issue, but it is different. It's certainly different. The dynamics are going to be different. The way that things happen, as you mentioned, with the preparation is going to be different. The way that things are communicated to the quarterbacks or throughout the offense are going to be different. And that doesn't mean that it's going to drop off.
Yep.
Obviously, the opt-outs are going to have a factor in that, but it's just going to be different. You had so much success with that system going the way that it went throughout the year, and now that's changed. And change is usually difficult to manage, especially when you have a compressed amount of time to do it.
I think it does help that Tennessee, they have more than 1 week to prepare.
Right.
You give them a month, I think that helps. And I do think that Heupel and Golesh were pretty much on the same page in their preparation. So Tennessee will script the first, 15 plays?
Yep.
But I think it does help that they've got more time to prepare.
Bob?
I think the fact that this is Heupel's offense lessens that blow somewhat. If it had been a defensive coach, say it's Jeremy Pruitt lost his offense, well, never mind.
Say he lost his wife couldn't help with recruiting anymore. All right. When we come back, we will have more football later, but I want to talk about Tennessee's shooting. Do you know how bad they're shooting the ball this year? Statistically speaking, we'll show you next. It's scary. But come on back. Let's talk about their shooting. How big of a concern is that moving forward? Jimmy already mentioned offensive efficiency. These kind of go hand in hand. Come on back on the Sports Source and we'll talk about it.
Miss an episode? Catch up at sportsource.tv or our YouTube channel.